The best strategy to help you silence fear in your life is to actually have a strategy. Don't have one yet? That's okay. I got you. Right now, you can get my Brave Life Planner for free. Just go to getyourbraveon.info and you can download my morning boot up routine that helps you focus on what you're grateful for, develop strategies and pathways to achieve your goals, and it helps you pick one brave thing a day to do so you don't get so overwhelmed. You also get my free daily planner to help you stay on task, and there's a video that comes with it to walk you through on how to use it. Download it for free at getyourbraveon.info. Brave Podcast Network.
How did the world's greatest love story become known as a hate group? This isn't going to be fixed with just great ads. What our hope is that the message of He Gets Us inspires or calls up every one of us to better reflect that radical love of Jesus, this brave brand of confounding love.
Sounds familiar, doesn't it? That's from one of the most talked about and somewhat controversial commercials in the Super Bowl in 2023. You know, the one about Jesus from the group called He Gets Us. So who are they? Where did they get all the money? Why are they doing this brave thing? You're about to find out. My guest, one of the founders of He Gets Us right now, Brad Hill.
Great to be with you, Amanda. Thank you.
Everybody wants to know, where'd you guys come from?
Everyone saw the Super Bowl, like you said, but actually we're in month number 10 of what we hope is going to be a multi-year effort. And essentially, He Gets Us is a media campaign kind of becoming something more of a movement. And our goal really is to invite everybody around us to take a fresh look at Jesus. So we've been doing that through TV, through lots of online digital media, and even billboards, lots of other places your folks may have seen. But all that led up to last Sunday when we got to be on the biggest stage of all, which is the Super Bowl.
It was awesome. I saw it. I followed you guys for quite some time. I got a hat. I got one of my free hats. I'm super pumped. By the way, their merch is free. I want to ask you about that. But on this podcast, I'd like to talk about bravery, because when I first became a single mom with 3 kids, it was 10 years ago. Now they're teenagers. They were really little. They were 4, 2, and 8 weeks old. And I was the world's most fearful woman because I didn't see it coming. And I realized that bravery is not something that just happens to you. Bravery is a choice. And then I realized, wait a second, it's actually a command. Joshua 1:9, have I not commanded you, declares the Lord, to be strong and courageous? And I feel like I've made that option. And every time I do brave things, it gives me the courage to do the next brave thing. And I love to highlight people doing brave things. So to its core, tell me about the bravery behind the heart of this organization that says, you know what, we're going to shake things up with the message of Jesus. Where did that courage and bravery come from? Because that kind of stuff is contagious.
Before we ever ran our first ad for He Gets Us, we started actually doing a lot of listening and a lot of research. And we learned in very simple terms what I think a lot of us probably already sense, or maybe we already know. And that is that, hey, in our communities, with our neighbors, our friends, our coworkers, folks are not always so sure about the church these days. Mm-hmm. They may not even be so sure about Christians and Christians they know, or how Christians may act or behave. But when we turn to the topic of Jesus, what we heard over and over again was that there is a much more positive, much more open posture toward the person of Jesus. And so that led to really a strategy. We looked around and we crafted all this into a very simple but profound problem statement. And the problem statement that we've anchored to is, how did the world's greatest love story become known as a hate group?
Yeah. Yep.
And that might resonate with some of your listeners in the sense of just what we see happening in our world and our culture right now. But this isn't going to be fixed with just great ads, although it's a really powerful tool. Mm-hmm. The power of He Gets Us ultimately does make its way all the way down to individual one-on-one conversations that you have, that I have, that everybody can have. And so actually, I love your theme, because what our hope is that the message of He Gets Us inspires or calls up every one of us to better reflect that radical love of Jesus with the people we interact with. We just hope that these ads, these messages, are kind of a catalyst, to use your word, sort of, that there could be a movement of this brave brand of confounding love that Jesus modeled for us, and we can all reflect.
Do you think that Jesus had a PR problem? I always say, I think He has a little bit of a PR problem, and it's because a lot of us are going around acting like we're not like Him. And I see it in my children. I have teenagers, especially my 16-year-old daughter. I think the younger generation sees this hypocrisy and just says, well, I don't get it. That's not for me. Is that somewhat of who you're targeting with these ads?
Well, let me answer that. One of the statements we got through that research I mentioned that was so striking for me, these were people we talked to who would not consider themselves to be Jesus followers, certainly would not check a box for a Christian. They're really the folks that were, most interested in reaching. And when we talked to them about Jesus, they often lit up. They were actually quite positive, like, yeah, Jesus was a good guy. Oh, Jesus was a good teacher. We would hear those phrases. And we would probe on that. And we would, well, what do you like about his teaching? And what are the things that you really respect? And they would say things like, he loved everyone, and he was compassionate, and he was accessible, and he sought peace. And then this phrase came from, again, mind you, these are people who are not Jesus followers, but they said, if we all lived the way Jesus taught, the world would be better off. And these are not Jesus followers saying this, right?
Right.
But to the point of like image or PR, I don't personally believe that Jesus needs any of our help. He was perfect, by the way, and led an incredible example that even non-Jesus followers, when they recognize it, they respect it. But if you like the ads we ran in the Super Bowl, it's funny you mentioned your kids, because we had two of them, and we juxtaposed kids and adults. Those were really the two ads that we ran. Okay. And we were doing that in a way to say, hey, I'm a parent too. Like, please understand, kids are not perfect. They're a handful. I get it. But there's this childlike approach to loving others. Mm-hmm. And Jesus was very vocal about this, right? He talked a lot about faith like a child and, let the children come. And so we essentially were attempting to highlight, if I can paraphrase, the best in children against kind of the worst in adults, and how we behave. That was the juxtaposition. And so, I just come back to that phrase that these folks told us, like, hey, if the world lived the way Jesus taught, we'd probably be better off. I think if we all seek to do that might actually be the best PR effort we could evoke.
That could be the brave thing that you do today. I made this mission when I was so afraid to get your brave on. Just do one brave thing a day. And sometimes maybe that is loving the person that's hard to love, and that you think is, but Jesus still loves them. So it's Monday after the Super Bowl. Everyone's tired at work, but you guys are like on fire. What was some of the number one responses you got from people?
The biggest summary for us is that the country is talking about Jesus. He Gets Us, as a brand new advertiser, by the way, was ranked either number 1 or number 2 most talked about ad in the Super Bowl this year.
Nice.
So whether you're for, against, somewhere in the middle, wherever you fall on that spectrum, we're excited that folks are turning their attention toward Jesus. You may know that the ad campaign, the messages we put out there, they're very specific. They focus on a part of Jesus, like who he was, how he led, how he taught, what he said. We work with a huge network of churches, ministries, lots of partners who are then going to be able to maybe take those people through more of a story, more of a journey. So we have specific metrics that we look at as a campaign. How many people saw the ad? How many people came to the website? How many responses did we get? We were flooded with prayer requests, with live chat, with email, people subscribing to Bible reading plans. And I personally got a chance to be involved in some of the email and some of the chat. We're still tallying all the data, but I think one of our top, if not our top responses really was, how can I get involved? So you talk about being brave. I mean, we had a lot of folks that were just so taken aback that there was something like this. And so the desire to use it, the desire to, kind of bring it down to that personal level, I think is white hot. And we're
how
hoping
can you get involved?
Yeah. So we have a number of things we've been busy on to try to essentially like build a ground game around this, if you will. And actually for everyone, for your listeners especially, we've got just the simplest of ways that you can kind of be a He Gets Us insider, if you will. We have folks praying. We have folks sharing with others. You're a great model, Amanda, because you also got a piece of merch. We have hats and shirts. And then we also have people that are participating in many other ways. So there's a text. Folks can actually still text the word Super Bowl to 70193. So if you just text Super Bowl to 70193, we'll get you into kind of a very, very tolerable series of messages where we want to prompt us all to pray together, to be inspired by other stories. If I could show you stories that are flooding in right now, it's incredible what folks are experiencing. And I'm curious, so when you got, I think you said you had a hat or maybe a shirt.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember, you can't pay with it with money. Do you remember what you did to pay for your item?
I'm working on loving on my children's stepmom.
Okay.
Like Jesus. Mm-hmm. I went and I took her flowers. Mm-hmm.
Good for you. So, one of the questions I think that's out there sometimes is like, wow, it's really expensive to run a Super Bowl ad. Mm-hmm. What's a tangible thing that we're doing to actually like serve, make the world a better place?
I was going to ask you about that. Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is a great example where we have well over 25,000 people on Super Bowl night who ordered items. And the way you pay for these is you have to choose which act of radical love you want to do for someone else. It could be love a stranger, pray for an enemy, go out of your way to pay someone a compliment. And so we're essentially now getting stories in from 25,000 plus people who are being challenged to just take a small act of love to their neighbor, their coworker, their friend.
I like that.
There's a lot more happening as well, but that's like a very tangible, accessible way that anybody can just think about, okay, I'm going to try to live a little bit more lovingly today than I did yesterday.
And let's go into the money a little. What do you say to a little bit of I call them the crusaders, that come up and find the things that they're critical about? And they said, well, why'd you spend all that money on a Super Bowl ad? What do you say to the critics right now? We're
attempting something that, as far as I know, as far as we know, has really never been done before, bringing the message of Jesus to this national stage at a level of scale, level of quality that just hasn't been done. And so that does come with a cost, right? I mean, it's a bold vision. So it is expensive, and we're super grateful that we have really a growing community of donors that have said, we're in, like, we want to support this. And so they're pushing us forward into places like the Super Bowl. This weekend we'll be at the NBA All-Stars. We'll be involved in March Madness. And by the way, Grammy Awards, like not just sports. There's a lot of places where the messages appear. Just from a marketing standpoint, Super Bowl's expensive. No two ways about it. And we pay, by the way, the same rates that Disney and Jeep and TurboTax are paying, which, by the way, allows the He Gets Us message to get into places that formerly may not have really welcomed religious advertising or had been open to this. So we've seen God open doors, by the way, that were previously closed. That's been incredible. In marketing, we measure the dollar spend based on how many people saw it. What it's literally called cost per thousand, CPM. And the Super Bowl, there's very few places left where everybody's watching the same thing at the same time. And 2/3 of Americans would actually say they watched the Super Bowl for the
Commercials.
And so on a cost per thousand basis, it's one of the best deals you can get. And so if you have the budget, big if, right? But if you have the budget, it's actually a really good way to efficiently get a message out. And we saw 113 million estimated viewers Sunday night. And you're kind of referencing it, Amanda, but there's been so much follow-on media. Every major newspaper, most major cable news have covered it. We don't pay for those things. So the attention is growing.
Yes, it definitely is. I remember when I worked at K-Love Radio and we would do a lot of fundraising, and because it's non-commercial. I remember the CEO of the Times, his name was Mike Novak. He said, the gospel is free. Getting it to you is not.
I love that heart. And I think there's also some of the costs that may get overlooked is the creation of the ads we all watch on Super Bowl Sunday. And we believe Jesus deserves excellence. And the message of Jesus is the most important, as we say, the world's greatest love story. But also we're trying to tell that story through a modern lens where we can compete toe to toe with any other advertiser who's out there. And I can tell you, like, big insurance companies, cell phone brands, retail brands that we all see, their budgets are multiple times what we're spending on He Gets Us. So we're trying to be very good stewards, but we're also trying to do this with an exceptional level of quality that's going to get the attention of our culture.
Where does the money come from?
We have an organization called the Signatory, who really is serving the campaign by aggregating all the donors that want to support it, and then being that, it's called a fiduciary agent, donor advised fund. So they're the organization that really acts on behalf of the donors, and the donors. It's a growing group. We've talked about the fact that they span multiple churches, multiple denominations. They really come from a fairly diverse cross-section of Christianity, of Jesus followers. And most of them have asked to remain anonymous. So that's their wishes that we respect. There's one or two that have, spoken out publicly, and that's their prerogative, of course. But most of them, really would rather not take personal credit or not have their names on it, and really just allow Jesus and this message of Jesus' radical love to be the star. So I can tell you that every one of the donors, and by the way, most of them I don't know. I don't even know who they are, but they come in because they are followers of Jesus, and they believe in this mission of introducing folks and raising the respect and relevance of Jesus. It's a very simple message. You may have noticed on the website, hegetsus.com, we posted an article over the weekend because a lot of folks are wondering, like, it can't be that simple that it's about Jesus. There must be an agenda. Yeah. And so we literally put out an article on the homepage that says He Gets Us has an agenda. But you might be disappointed because it's actually pretty simple. It's just about the radical, confounding love of Jesus. And so we're going to stick by that. And anybody who's, donating and supporting is going to be behind that agenda.
So I know you said a little bit more about serving others. I just think about what you said earlier about how did the greatest love story ever told become associated with hate? When you get merchandise, you can, you're encouraged to go and do something nice that's radical love. What are some of the more brave things we can do when we see this and we see the Super Bowl ad and we get fired up and we're like, somebody's just showing me like your single mom ad with Mary made me cry. Like, Jesus was born to a single mom. And I always see Jesus kind of had a stepdad, like he's just like us. What else can we do in our daily lives? Maybe we can't give millions to the plan, but what brave things can we do to be a better example of a loving, radical Jesus for everybody that we come around?
I'll get super practical, Amanda. Let's talk about social media for a minute. So when we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter, unfortunately, what we see all across culture is it kind of brings out, sadly, the worst in people a lot of times. And even, Jesus followers, we're probably not doing a whole lot better on this front. I would encourage, this is something I've been challenging myself to do lately. I would encourage all of us to think carefully when you're going to post, or you're going to comment. It's a simple but really important thing, even to the extent of the He Gets Us campaign that we're talking about. We've had no shortage of support, but also questions, concern, and even criticism. And it's natural that people want to come to defend or maybe argue about it. And yet anybody, certainly in the sound of my voice, I would just say, hey, we actually don't want to be known for being defensive or critical or just always trying to be right. We're called to be known for the love that we demonstrate. 1 Peter 3:15, always be ready to give a reason for the hope that you have, and do so with gentleness and respect. And so my challenge to me and to any of us would be, hey, next time you see something that makes your blood boil a little bit, what might be a way you could respond or reach out in a way that's loving to that person? Doesn't mean you have to compromise your principles or your truth. It doesn't mean that you haven't had experiences that are tough. But, to me, the best thing is if somebody turns to me and says, hey, everybody else is mad, but you're not. Like, what's different about you? That would be an amazing conversation starter, right? So that could be on social, on the highway, at the grocery store, wherever you are. That would be one way I think we could all maybe do a little better here.
You'll never know the impact of your kindness to somebody and the legacy that it leaves. And even if you just mention the name Jesus. My mother tells a story about she was very young and she was very sad and she was at a Chicago Cubs baseball game and she saw this woman in front of her sitting at the game who was just so happy. And my mom was at a really low place. For some reason, my mom's a little like me. We talk to everybody. And she just reached down. She just looked at her one time and she's like, why are you so happy? What makes you so happy? Because that woman said, it's Jesus at Wrigley Field. And that woman and that conversation changed my mother's life, which then changed my life because then I met this love of Jesus. And then my mission is to tell other people how much they're loved by Jesus. And so you have no idea how just in that moment, telling somebody when they ask, why are you so nice? Or why are you so kind? Or why are you so happy? And you just say, I really love Jesus. It's not that hard. It really is very a simple, yet I know it's a very brave thing to do, especially these days. So what's next? I know you mentioned we got this big Super Bowl ad. We've got all this attention and we're going to March Madness. What is the next big thing for He Gets Us?
Well, we're really excited, really, in terms of what's going on with all these Jesus fans, Jesus followers, really building now into a movement. The ads will keep coming. So we've got more messages planned. We of course, Easter's upon us here shortly, and then different themes through the course of the year. Whenever you hear that there's a new He Gets Us ad, just be ready because we're going to be probably exploring some aspect of Jesus and how he loved, but we may be doing it in a way that's unexpected. And so plenty of those messages will be out there, but everything you're describing, Amanda, it's sort of like what's next for He Gets Us really depends on all of us and how we go out and reflect this love to others. I call it the water cooler moment. Yeah. I think even Monday morning after the Super Bowl, so many folks said they went back to work or they were in the carpool line or wherever they were, and their friend said, would ask like, hey, Amanda, you're like a Jesus person. Did you see those commercials last night? What's up with that? Do you believe that stuff? So it's a great, as one person said, it's like, we don't have to go knock on doors. They're coming toward us to ask us questions. Never discount the fact that you're, like you said, your act of kindness, your act of love might just signal to someone that there's an openness there to begin a conversation. I'll share one message that came into us Sunday night. Yeah. So a gentleman wrote in, won't use his name, but he said he described himself as a lifelong atheist and also said that he had recently lost his brother. It sounded like it was a pretty traumatic experience for him. But he said, I saw your ads tonight and I saw these two commercials and I think you're doing a great job. And he said, for the first time in 20 years, I have hope. And so he's not probably going to consider himself a Jesus follower yet, But it was that message of love your enemies, be childlike that we proposed in the Super Bowl that caused him to take a turn and just pay attention a little more. So we're all going to have those interactions probably. And as the year goes on, we'll continue to try to get those messages out in every nook and cranny that we can. But we really would love to mobilize folks, get them involved, and just influence the way we treat others.
Why do you do this?
I've been serving in various ways across technology in the church for a long time, and I've never seen an opportunity like he gets us, where we have the talent, we have, praise God, we have funding for this, but we have a strategy that feels like it's just right place, right time. So I believe that this project is a gift for all of us in the church. I am humbled just to be able to serve in a small part of it, but I think this is an opportunity that most of us have never seen and may never see again quite this way in our lifetimes. And so I think it's a great moment it's what our culture needs right now.
Yeah.
And so that's I don't know of anything more important that I could be doing with whatever time and energy I can put toward it. And so that's why I'm here.
That's great. We can all do something. If there's anything I didn't ask you that you would like to share about fear, bravery, anything else that's on your heart?
Well, I'll share one quick story to close that might give you a little perspective on the power we all have. I was wearing one of those He Gets Us hats, and I was sitting in the back of an Uber not too long ago. And the driver, he was probably like young 20s. And he looked in the rearview mirror, saw my hat. He's like, "What's the deal with your hat?" And so I had to make a split-second decision, right? Because I could have simply said, "Oh, it's just some hat," or "I got it from a friend," because maybe I was busy and didn't really want to get into it right then. But I felt maybe prompted that I should talk to this guy. So we got into a really good Jesus conversation. And he was sharing that he had grown up around the church and he had been taught these things, but he had kind of drifted away. And then this was his statement. He said, "I've made a lot of mistakes. And if Jesus knew what I've done, I don't think he would want me." And I think that sentiment is out there more than we realize, that folks don't know that they can approach Jesus or that he would welcome or accept them as they are. Part of that is honestly because of maybe how some of us have portrayed Jesus or acted as Christians in the past. But the fact is, everyone can come to Jesus, and that's what I reassured him about. And so you don't know what people are carrying around you. And so any chance we have to just open up a little dialogue, open up a conversation, and to encourage, doesn't mean we're inviting them to church right away. Doesn't mean that they're going to pray a prayer that minute. But it's going to make an impact. It's going to plant a seed for them. And so, use He Gets Us. These ads are everywhere. You can point to them. You can wear it. You can talk about it. But anyone who's a Jesus follower, I would say use it, because you can be an encouragement to that person next to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Amanda.
Because he was one of us too. I hope you join the movement. I'll put all of the links and the text codes in the show notes. Please join us. Please get your hat, your shirt, and go do something in the name of Jesus, in the name of love today in honor of it. And go get your brave on. Thank you so much for your support of the Get Your Brave On podcast. I'd love to connect with you. Call my hotline anytime and let me know how this podcast is impacting your life and how you're silencing fear at 530-4AMANDA. Let's connect on socials and get more strategies to silence fear every day on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Amanda Carroll Show. And if you want to go deeper, join my Patreon. You can get daily motivations and prayers and meditations and live videos. Just go to getyourbraveon.info and sign up to be a member of the Get Your Brave On tribe. Join our Facebook group too. Just search Get Your Brave On. And I'd be honored if you would follow this podcast and subscribe and even leave a review. That helps more women just like you facing a plot twist find more strategies to silence fear. I'll shout you out in the next episode, or even send me an email to amanda@amandacarroll.org and tell me how God is using this podcast in your life, like Kim did. She said, I just want to thank you for your podcast. I signed up in July and honestly always deleted your message. That's okay. Or sometimes just took a quick glance. But today was different. It was if God was drawing me to really take a look at it, and I did. After downloading the app to get a podcast, I went back and clicked on the prayer. As I stood in my bathroom brushing my teeth, the words just filled the room with a peacefulness. It came over me, and it was like a weight had been lifted. The stress of living with a few disabilities and being on long medical leave from work for over a year, and the stress of trying to go back to work with homeschooling 2 kids, I was keeping it all in. I just wanted to know how much you make a difference. I even shared your podcast with my mom, cousin, and brother, even though he's not a lady. He's going through a tough time and wanted him to hear the prayer. So bless you. Bless you. I am so thankful that God used this in your life. You're my why. I'm honored to hear from you. I'd love to hear from you. Reach out anytime. All the links are in the show notes. And I love the idea of you listening to the episodes while you're brushing your teeth. I actually think it's perfect. Start your day with me. So just make sure you follow the podcast so you don't miss an episode. Get your brave on.